Barron Ridge Speakers Agency proudly presents Speaker Spotlight, highlighting one of our keynote speakers from across the nation. Now, here's your Spotlight host, Mindy East.
Good afternoon. I am joined by Khalilah Johnson. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Mindy.
Khalilah is one of my newest speakers. Khalilah, you are I see your book behind you. I have mine right here. Khalilah is the author of Undefeated, Broken into Purpose. Now, I've heard you speak online, and you use the words undefeated and undefeatable consistently. Can you share with our audience a little bit about what that means?
Yes. So when I first wrote the book, when I started to try to think about my own story, I recognized that over all the things that I've overcome, such as teenage pregnancy, abuse at a young age, and seeing that through the generations that had been repeated from generation to generation, I realized that I was not a victim, but I was undefeated. The things that should have broken me actually made me. And so it turned a sad story, a broken story, and seeing how that developed, that it actually helped me and fueled me into the direction of my purpose. It seems just fitting. Undefeated. I'm still standing.
So. I love it. I love it. It's kind of like we're invincible as long as we're alive.
Yes.
That's a song or a lyric out of John Mayer's song. So that I want to use that as we kind of segue into what kind of encouragement or message would you give people that are feeling maybe overwhelmed or a little defeated during this COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I first want to just affirm and just validate those emotions are natural. This is an abnormal situation, and we have to find normalcy in an abnormal situation. And there's no right or wrong to do it. But one of the things that helped me realize is that there is always a disadvantage and an advantage in every disadvantage. And so if you reveal what happens right now is that everyone is standing still. And the time that we have right now to reflect, to rest, to be able to even press, there's a different perspective. The things that yesterday we were worried about are no longer our concerns today. It gives a greater appreciation for our families, what really matters. And for those that don't value time all the time, sometimes we can take for granted the time that we've been given. Now all of a sudden you're starting to think about the time that you have, what you could do, what life really looks like. And so that's the advantage and a disadvantage. And so overall, that may be overwhelming to some, but there is an advantage. If you look at with the eyes to say families are getting closer. There's a greater appreciation that's happening right now. Some of us have been running away from our feelings, just surviving. And now we have to stand still and really start to become self-aware, which is always a benefit. So I just want you to know that for anyone that is feeling that, those are natural feelings. But also after those feelings come up, acknowledge them, but then look to the brighter side. This is an advantage, and be appreciative of that.
Well, it sounds like you're giving us permission to feel those feelings, process them, and then move forward into a brighter future.
Definitely.
So, excuse me, pardon me. I'd also like to add, you're a faith-based speaker, but you also have a very traditional coaching foundation as far as business-minded women's empowerment groups. So you're perfect. I mean, you speak to males and females, and you're not just in one little cubby hole. So I love the title, Unpack to Impact. Tell us a little bit about that and share with us what that means.
Well, believe it or not, I came up with that after therapy. I recognized as I was dealing with a Christian therapist, and he was helping me through process some of the things that I had been through. And as I was processing that was what I did, the process I went through before I even wrote. I started to recognize the gems, the some of the belief systems, and I started to evaluate all of the things of distorted views that I had had. At one point, I thought that I was just victimized. I came from abused women who handed me this tragic story, and then I had to make the best pieces out of a victim's reality. And when I started to unpack that, I started to recognize they didn't hand me the broken pieces. They handed me the best that they could. My grandmother was someone who was abused at a very young age, and handled abuse from relatives when her mother died. And then she had children, and they repeated a lot of the same history. They were, molestation happened again, abuse and abusive relationships. One of the things I remember is when my stepdad, who my mom used to be married to, was very abusive. Everyone had to go live with people, and I had to go live with my grandmother. And at 7 years old, my grandmother knew to put me in therapy. So the things that she didn't know to do for herself, she knew to do for me. She had to survive. She had to keep going. She had 10 children, and she had to be strong. And so the things that my mother did, she maybe was handed a reality that made her think that she was less than, and she accepted things that she saw. But what they did for me was show me that there is strength in adversity. And there is no right or wrong. Sometimes you just have to survive in situations that are not meant to survive in. That's where dysfunction is created. But what they knew to do was constantly build faith. They knew to pray. They knew to try to do the best that they could. And through that, I no longer see that they handed me this hard life. They handed me strength. They handed me wisdom. They handed me the experience. They handed me the ability to see that no matter what you go through, when your back is against the wall, something greater comes forth when you can recognize that you are more than a conqueror. And so I'm grateful for the women, I'm grateful for the family, and I'm grateful for the legacy of strength that they left me. And I promise to do my best to unpack the past, to impact the future, so that I can give the next generation better than what I had.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, excuse me. Pardon me. What can someone do for themselves today to look forward to this future that we have that's still very uncertain and it's going to be redefined? What kind of message would you give, or what are your thoughts on that today?
I think that right now it's such a powerful place to stand still and start to reevaluate how we see things. I'm talking to a group of women now, and what I constantly show them is that this is a powerful point to stand still and reevaluate what's happening in the world. How does this transition affect us? What I see is that there are a lot of career paths that are no longer going to be relevant in 10 years. If you take the time that we're given right now to start to create a different path, how can you show up as a problem solver? There are adversities that build us into becoming problem solvers. Every one of us have been given a gift to bring a solution. Usually that solution is found when we're faced with something that causes us to be righteously indignant, angry, but a lot of times that passion is built on having to survive past a situation that maybe hindered us in the past. That is your opportunity to start to find those jewels, those that strength through the very thing that you have been given, and find your place, find your purpose. Just not a job, just not survival, but this is an opportunity to start to find the path of thriving. So I would just suggest to look for online courses that start to deal with the mindset. I have one myself, 21 Days to Mastering Mental Momentum. And these are the type of things that we do. We can do what we can. We can't fix the things that we can't. What's happening all around us, that's out of our control. But right now, we can determine that during this time of standing still, that we are not going to leave out of this without becoming better than we are today.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And, now is such a good time to pause and assess where we're at and look at the things that are serving us well, yes, and maybe let go of the things that are not doing us any good. So on a personal note, what are you doing as far as what's the lesson that you've learned in this? Lining.
Oh, wow. So I understand right now that there is a balance right now that I needed which was the rest. I needed the rest for restoration. I needed to press in the areas that I may have taken for granted. I needed to be able to press and pursue. And so some arenas I needed to be able to see things clearer. There's greater clarity for me than I've ever seen. I've gotten greater business plans. I've gotten greater strategy. I have more hours to stand still. And I am in classes, online classes, around the clock, just really investing in the areas of what I would like to learn. The things that I thought weren't my strength, I now pursue them to become a strength. I just find this time with family, I'm cooking more. we're sitting at the table together. I'm smiling more.
Oh.
Because it's just, you realize, in the face of realizing that life is not, we take for granted that every day is given to us. And with all the tragedies that are happening around, we recognize that for every breath, that is our greatest currency. It really is. Not wealth, not status, but the time that we've been given is our greatest currency. It is the first investment that we have been given. And so that allows you to start to think, how am I investing that? Who am I investing it in? What I could do better? And so every day just means more. And so for me, I think that I am more appreciative than I have been in a while. And so I think that's beautiful.
Oh, that is beautiful. I love how you framed that and just made it encompass everything. And, it all starts at home. I know, we're trying to reach business leaders and upper management and industry professionals, of course, who may not need us now, may not need our services now, but when they start booking those events later, we want them to know that we're still here. And so I love the way you framed that as far as starting to be successful at home first.
Yes.
So how would you segue that into, say, an office of a leader at work? What can they do when those employees come back and maybe they're a little, out of sync? They haven't been following their normal routine or discipline. What do you think's the best way to get America back on track?
I think for leaders, it is our first responsibility is to validate. I think that any environment of validation, I need to be reminded of who I am and what I can do. And so for some that may find there's a fatigue, as leaders, we can continue to remind them of who they are, their purpose, their why. Everything shifted. But when they get back to the workforce, when America comes back together, it is so important to be the reflection of leadership and identity for those that are coming back and having to reassess their life. I just think that having the environment of support, having the environment of understanding, and also having the environment of affirmation. This for some will be traumatic. This for some will change the way that the workforce is done. And having that patience, but also that understanding and remembering that as a leader, it is our job to be the reflection of those that we serve and those that are there to serve for us. So I think that that's just the environment, creating that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, let me ask you this, Khalilah. If someone is at home and they're on their own now, and they're finding it hard to stay on task, do you have anything that would help someone who maybe isn't a self-starter to create that inertia in their life?
For me, when I first left the workforce and came into the creative workforce, and you have to find that creativity or that creative way to keep yourself disciplined when there is no one telling you when to clock in and when to clock out. What I found was I started to do motivational videos. I kept myself in front of, listening to books that talked about the time management. I made sure that whatever resource I had available, that those were the voices that I listened to. I gave myself some time to adjust. Now, I didn't have to get up as early, so I started to adjust to that my times were starting to shift without having that alarm clock needing to go off at the same time. And I gave myself time to just remember that it's important to surround yourself with voices that affirm that you still have something to do, you still have purpose. So I think that that's really important. And then creating a schedule. Although you don't have anywhere to be, you don't have to go back to the grind of everything. But take that time to say, well, at this time, I'll start to read something. You know what I mean? And before you even begin your day, I don't have to be at this place at right now, but I'll do something productive and start to measure that. Measure how you're spending your time so that it's not so hard to transition back when things start to maybe not go back what they used to be, but start to become more normal,
right,
so to say.
Yes. Oh, that's excellent advice. And, I like the fact that you are encouraging us to be, kind of patient,
Yes.
and allow ourselves a little flexibility in there, but yet to stay focused and stay on track, because this too shall pass, right? This too shall not stay.
Yes, it will.
So where can people find your book?
Right now, it's on Amazon, or you can buy one at my website, KhalilahJohnson.com, and that's where you can find it, an autographed copy.
And who would your perfect audience be to speak to if you could get in front of anybody? Who would you like to be on stage in front of?
That is such a hard question, because I find that I speak to audiences of all over and from all ages. And at one point, it was very surprising to me that people from the audience that seemed to wait for me were much older females, and even an older male. That for instance, was a 95-year-old white woman who came to me after I spoke, and she said to me, whispered in my ear, "I never told anyone, but I was molested too." There was, in one speaking engagement, I had a 75-year-old Black woman who came up to me and said, "I'll follow you anywhere. My husband beats me and there's no one to tell." There was one young guy that was about 23 years old that came up to me and said, "I was diagnosed with this and people don't understand me." A 65-year-old Black male stood in line for me to sign his book after I spoke and told me about the controlling mother that he had. At the time, I didn't understand, because I thought that I was speaking to people maybe that looked like me, that were my age, because I thought I was speaking to me. But in actuality, I was speaking to every generation. I was speaking to those that represent my grandmother. I was speaking to those that didn't have a voice that represent my mother. I was speaking to those that represent my grandfather. I was speaking to those that represent a younger version of me. There's an audience, if I could say that I favor those that have purpose, and I think that's everyone. So it's hard for me to narrow it down. I believe that purpose is for anyone at any age. There's always something, and my audience reminds me of that there's always something that you can gain.
And I think, you have such a huge following, and like you mentioned, it's all ages. It encompasses all ranges of race. There's no difference as far as if it's male or female or color or education. You just connect really well with people. You just engage well with that audience. And so as people move forward, we know there's nothing that's going to be booked right now, but if you do have an event coming up in the fall or the winter or even next spring, and you'd like Khalilah to be on stage and share her wisdom and business advice, you can contact me, and I will set you up with Khalilah. And Khalilah, I just thank you for your time today. I so appreciate having you in my agency. You're a delight to work with, and I so enjoy you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Mindy, and you are just as delight to have representing me. So I appreciate all of the things that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Please join us next time. For more information on booking a keynote speaker or event MC, contact Mindy East at Barron Ridge Speakers Agency.